Welcome everyone to another exciting journey into the fascinating world of rare coins and unbelievable treasures that hide in plain sight, right inside your pockets and change jars. Today we are going to talk about a coin that has created buzz among collectors and historians alike, a coin that has been rumored to be worth a staggering $44 million simply because of its rarity, errors, and unique history. And that coin is none other than the 1980p quarter dollar, struck at the Philadelphia Mint, a piece of metal that for most people is just 25 cents, yet for those who know the mysteries of numismatics it is a gateway to fortune. So buckle up as we dive deep into the details, history, errors, mistakes, and all the fascinating possibilities that make this coin so incredibly valuable and why it is considered one of the most sought-after error quarters in existence. Now to begin with, the 1980p quarter itself belongs to the Washington Quarter series, which has been in circulation since 1932 to commemorate the 200th birthday of George Washington. The obverse features the profile of Washington, while the reverse during that period depicted an eagle perched on a bundle of arrows with olive branches below, symbolizing peace and strength. The Philadelphia Mint produced millions of these coins in 1980. So under normal circumstances a coin from this year and mint mark would not be considered rare at all. However, what sets this coin apart are the errors and striking anomalies that make it one of a kind. Collectors understand that mint errors are often responsible for transforming ordinary change into extraordinary treasures, and in the case of the 1980p quarter the errors were not only unusual but layered, compounding the rarity and pushing its potential value into the tens of millions. One of the most famous errors reported with this coin is a dramatic double die obverse. In some examples the word liberty appears with clear doubling, and the motto "I in God we trust" shows signs of being doubled in a way that is highly visible even to the naked eye. This kind of doubling is not a small mistake. It represents a fundamental error in the die-making process where the hub impressed the design onto the die more than once in slightly different positions, creating a striking effect that collectors covet. Then there are accounts of off-center strikes. Some 1980p quarters have been found struck significantly off-center, with Washington's head shifted and part of the coin's blank planchet exposed. Such errors are rare, but when they combine with a double die the value skyrockets. Adding to this is the presence of planchet errors, such as clipped planchets where a small curved section of the coin is missing because of misfeeds in the punching process, and even wrong planchet strikes where coins were struck on planchets meant for other denominations like a nickel or even a foreign coin, making those pieces absolutely extraordinary in value. Now imagine a coin that combines multiple errors, a double die, an off-center strike, a clipped planchet, and a wrong planchet all rolled into one. While extremely unlikely, the very possibility keeps collectors searching endlessly, and it is coins like the rumored 1980p quarter valued at $44 million that fuel this passion. Another contributing factor to the mystique of this coin is the Philadelphia Mint's practices in 1980. During that time, quality control was not as rigorous as it is today, with fewer advanced machines for detecting flawed strikes, so mistakes slipped through more frequently, yet very few survived circulation in pristine condition, meaning that high-grade mint error coins from that year are exceptionally scarce, and scarcity plus demand equals astronomical value. Stories circulate among collectors of a single pristine 1980p quarter with a major double die obverse and off-center strike that was discovered in an old collection and sold for tens of millions at a private auction. While these reports are hard to verify, they continue to stoke interest and speculation, because in the numismatic world even rumors can drive demand and prices upward. What makes the valuation of $44 million even more intriguing is the psychology behind collecting. Collectors are not just buying metal, they are buying history, mystery, and bragging rights. Owning a coin like this means holding a tangible piece of American minting history that no one else has, and that exclusivity creates fierce bidding wars. Beyond double dies and off-center strikes, there are also examples of broad strikes where the coin was struck without the collar in place, causing it to spread out wider than normal, and partial collar strikes leaving a weirdly raised rim. Some coins from 1980p have also been reported with die cracks, cuds, or missing letters where part of the die broke off or filled with grease, making words like liberty or quarter dollar appear incomplete. These small anomalies may seem trivial to the untrained eye, but to the dedicated collector they represent rare windows into the minting process. Each mistake adds layers of uniqueness, and when compounded they elevate the coin from interesting to priceless. The value is further amplified by condition. A coin with these errors in circulated grade might fetch thousands or tens of thousands. But in uncirculated mint state condition, especially graded by top grading companies such as PCGS or NGC, the value can escalate into millions, and when the story of a perfect error-ridden 1980p quarter reached the community, it transformed into a legend worth $44 million. Skeptics often ask how a single coin can command such a price, and the answer lies in the convergence of rarity, demand, condition, and collector psychology. Coins like the 1933 St. Gaudens Double Eagle or the 1794 Flowing Hair Silver Dollar have fetched tens of millions at auctions simply because of their rarity and mystique, so it is not inconceivable for a unique error coin like the 1980p quarter to achieve similar status. Add to this the factor of provenance. If a coin is discovered in a famous collection or has a documented history of ownership, its value increases exponentially. Rumors suggest that one of these rare 1980p quarters was once in the possession of a private collector whose estate's sale caused a bidding frenzy, pushing the value to the $44 million mark. Whether this is true or not, the legend persists, fueling further excitement and speculation. What truly cements the coin's mythical status is the allure of possibility. The idea that one could stumble upon a coin worth millions in their pocket change is irresistible. It makes everyday people into treasure hunters, constantly checking their coins, examining dates, mint marks, and details. And that widespread attention only drives more demand and hype. As we explore deeper, it is important to note that Philadelphia mint coins from that era had no mint mark, making them harder to distinguish from ordinary circulation pieces. So a 1980p quarter looks at first glance like any other quarter, yet beneath the surface may hide doubling, striking errors, or other anomalies worth a fortune. This subtlety adds to the drama, because the coin could easily slip by unnoticed, making discoveries all the more thrilling. Experts suggest checking for clear doubling in Liberty and In God We Trust off-center strikes where design elements are missing or shifted, clipped planchets with curved missing sections, and diode breaks that create raised lines or blobs of metal. Each of these errors contributes to rarity, and the rarest combinations of them push the coin into mythic value. The story of the $44 million coin has also inspired a new generation of collectors. People who once overlooked change now carefully inspect every quarter, hoping to find the jackpot. This has boosted interest in numismatics overall, with online forums buzzing about sightings, auctions, and the endless question of whether someone could be the next to uncover a fortune. Beyond the financial aspect, there is also a cultural and historical fascination. The 1980s were a transitional time in America, marked by technological advancements and economic changes, and coins from that era carry the weight of that history. To hold a 1980p quarter is to hold a snapshot of that moment, and when errors add uniqueness, it becomes a one-of-a-kind artifact, a relic of both minting mishaps and cultural memory. The astronomical valuation of $44 million reflects not just the physical coin but the stories attached to it. Stories of minting mistakes, lost quality control, hidden treasures, and record-breaking auctions. When you think about it, value in numismatics is not simply about metal content. After all, a quarter contains only a small amount of copper and nickel worth a fraction of a dollar. Value is about rarity, demand, history, and mythology, and the 1980p quarter with its legendary errors encapsulates all of those qualities, making it priceless in the eyes of collectors. So as we bring this deep dive to a close, remember that the world of coins is full of surprises, and sometimes the most ordinary-looking piece of change can hide an extraordinary story. So next time you receive a quarter in change, especially from 1980 with no mint mark, take a closer look, because you never know, you just might be holding a fortune, and maybe, just maybe, you could be the next person to uncover the legendary $44 million quarter. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey into numismatic mystery. Next, 1989p quarter dollar coin, we dive deep into the fascinating world of rare coins, hidden treasures, and the mysteries that make seemingly ordinary pocket change worth a staggering fortune. And in this episode, we are going to uncover the secrets behind the 1989p $quarter coin, a coin that at first glance looks like any other quarter you might casually hand over at a convenience store. But because of its unique combination of minting errors, production anomalies, historical context, and collector demand, it has reached legendary status in numismatic circles with a rumored worth of up to $13 million. And when we say that one small piece of metal can fetch such a price, we are not exaggerating, because the coin world thrives on rarity, condition, and most importantly mistakes that slip past the United States Mint's strict quality controls, and in the case of the 1989p quarter, the Philadelphia Mint was responsible for producing hundreds of millions of coins that year. Yet among that massive production run, a few slipped through the cracks with striking errors that would forever change their destiny from common change to million-dollar marvels. And what makes this story even more gripping is the way collectors, treasure hunters, and numismatists piece together the history of such coins, exploring not just what makes them flawed but why those flaws have such an enormous impact on value. So let's break it down and explore in detail every aspect of the 1989p $quarter coin, because when we talk about $13 million for a single coin, we need to understand the kinds of errors that could justify such astronomical prices. And it starts with double die errors where the design elements on either the obverse or reverse appear doubled because of misalignment during the hubbing process, meaning Washington's profile, or the lettering like "Liberty in God We Trust," or the date 1989, could appear shadowed or doubled, and such errors are incredibly rare, instantly making the coin stand out from the billions of standard strikes. Then there are off-center strikes, where the coin is not properly aligned in the press and ends up with part of the design missing or shifted dramatically to one side, with some extreme examples having as much as half of the design absent yet still showing a full date and mint mark, which collectors crave and are willing to pay astronomical sums for. And in the case of the 1989p quarter, off-center strikes combined with visible doubling are almost unheard of, which only pushes values into the millions. Then we can't forget about planchet errors, when the blank piece of metal that is supposed to be perfectly round, smooth, and made of the correct composition ends up flawed, such as being too thin, too thick, clipped, or even struck on the wrong planchet, like a dime or a foreign coin. And with so many millions of planchets moving through the mint machinery, mistakes can happen. But when a 1989p quarter is struck on a nickel planchet or a copper cent planchet, the coin becomes a true anomaly, instantly rare and extremely valuable. And then there are die cracks and cuds, where the die used to strike the coins develops a fracture and leaves behind raised lines or missing sections on the finished coin, creating unique patterns that make no two coins exactly alike. Essentially one-of-a-kind errors that collectors hunt with passion. And when you factor in the historical context, 1989 was a year of transition in the mint, with older machinery still in use and quality controls not as advanced as today, making it possible for unusual and dramatic mistakes to occur, and those that survived circulation in relatively unscathed condition are now the holy grail for collectors. And it's important to mention that condition, or grade, plays a massive role in value, because even with an error, if the coin has been heavily circulated, scratched, or worn down, its worth may be diminished. But if a 1989p quarter with a dramatic error has been preserved in mint state condition, with sharp details and original luster, then the value skyrockets. And we are talking not just thousands or hundreds of thousands but millions. And this is why a particular specimen has been rumored to have crossed the $13 million threshold at private auction. Because it combined a dramatic double die with an off-center strike and was preserved in superb condition, making it a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. And beyond just the errors themselves, there's the psychology of collecting, where rarity plus demand equals astronomical prices. And in the coin world, stories matter, provenance matters, and when a coin has an exciting narrative behind it, like slipping out of the Philadelphia Mint against all odds and being rediscovered decades later, it feeds into the legend, driving up collector excitement and competition. And when wealthy collectors compete for ownership of something unique, the sky is the limit. So while most of us look at a 1989p quarter as nothing more than 25 cents, those who know the hidden possibilities see a potential multi-million-dollar treasure. and think of all the variations, like broad strikes where the collar that normally holds the coin in place during striking malfunctions, allowing the coin to spread out wider than normal while still showing all details. Or multiple strikes where the coin is struck more than once, creating overlapping designs. Or wrong metal strikes during transition years, because sometimes leftover planchets from earlier years accidentally get used, creating a coin that technically should not exist. And for the 1989 quarter dollar, the existence of such anomalies has been confirmed, though in extremely limited quantities, and each new discovery sends shockwaves through the numismatic community. As people realize that treasures are still out there waiting to be found in coin rolls, old collections, or even in everyday change, and this sense of adventure is what keeps collectors hunting, because the idea that a 25-cent coin could secretly be worth millions sparks imaginations and fuels the hobby. And with the coin market being driven not just by intrinsic metal value but by rarity and demand, the sky truly is the limit, and think about the possibilities. What if someone discovers a 1989 quarter struck on a gold planchet, or with a completely missing obverse or reverse design, or a coin where the mint mark is missing entirely, or punched in the wrong place, or with a misaligned die strike that gives Washington a distorted appearance? Each of these scenarios could take a coin's value into uncharted territory, and that is exactly why the 1989 quarter has become the stuff of legend, because it embodies all of these possibilities, and though most of them are locked away in private collections, the chance remains that someone out there might still stumble upon one, tucked into a jar of coins, hiding in a drawer, or buried in a box passed down from grandparents. And that thrill of discovery is why this story resonates with so many people. So as we bring this exploration to life, remember that the 1989 quarter dollar coin is a symbol of how mistakes, accidents, and imperfections can transform something ordinary into something extraordinary. With the right error, the right condition, and the right timing, a quarter can become a $13 million treasure. So keep your eyes open, keep hunting, and who knows, maybe the next time you get a quarter back in change, you'll be holding a piece of history worth more than a luxury mansion. And as always, thank you for joining us on this journey into the world of rare coins, hidden treasures, and numismatic legends. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of incredible discoveries, unbelievable values, and the mysteries that might just be sitting in your pocket right now waiting to be found. Next, 1983 quarter dollar coin, we are diving into one of the most fascinating stories in the world of rare coins, a story that involves a coin you might think of as ordinary but in reality, because of its unusual history, its striking errors, and the mysteries that surround it, has transformed into a treasure worth millions, and that coin is none other than the 1983 quarter dollar. A coin that at first glance seems just like any other pocket change you might have used for a soda or slipped into a vending machine, but as collectors and experts have discovered, the 1983 quarter can be worth as much as $27 million under the right conditions because of the rare errors and mistakes that appeared during its minting process. And in this deep exploration, we're going to walk through exactly why this coin is so significant, how these errors happened, what makes it so different from other quarters, and why collectors are willing to pay astronomical amounts of money to get their hands on it. So let's get started by stepping back into the early 1980s when the United States Mint was transitioning through a particularly complicated period of coin production, a time when the economy was under pressure, the minting facilities were under heavy demand, and mistakes were bound to slip through, and one such mistake turned out to involve the 1983 Philadelphia minted quarter, which today stands as a prime example of how error coins can capture the imagination of collectors around the globe. Now, the first thing to understand about this coin is that in 1983 the Mint did not release any official uncirculated sets, which meant that quarters from that year, especially from the Philadelphia Mint marked with the P Mint mark, were harder to find in pristine condition, and that scarcity immediately gave rise to more interest among collectors. But scarcity alone does not make a coin worth $27 million. What really made the 1983 quarter so special were the unusual errors that crept into its design, striking, and composition, and these errors are what we're going to unfold one by one because each of them adds a layer of mystery and value to this coin, beginning with the double die errors, one of the most famous types of mistakes in the world of numismatics, and on the 1983 p quarter there are examples where doubling can be seen in the inscriptions, especially on the words "In God We Trust and Liberty," where under magnification collectors have spotted shadow-like images caused by a misalignment during the striking process, and these doubled letters are not only visually fascinating but they also instantly transform a common coin into something extraordinary. Next we have off-center strikes, another major factor in driving up the value of this coin, and in the case of the 1983 p quarter, off-center strikes could range from just a few percent off to as much as 50%, leaving part of the design missing or blank while still clearly identifiable as a quarter. And collectors love these kinds of dramatic mistakes because they tell a story about how the minting machinery slipped up and created a one-of-a-kind piece that will never be replicated. And when you combine an off-center strike with a strong date and mint mark, you're looking at a coin that is practically a legend in itself. But it doesn't stop there, because the 1983 p quarter also became famous for its planchet errors, particularly coins that were struck on the wrong metal or on incomplete planchets, and some have been discovered struck on copper planchets instead of the copper nickel clad that quarters were supposed to be made of at the time, which gives them a different weight, color, and metallic tone, instantly setting them apart and skyrocketing their value. And in other cases, planchet flaws meant that the coin might have missing layers, cracks, or laminations that create dramatic visual effects collectors prize highly. Now add to this the infamous die cracks and cuds that appeared on some 1983 p quarters, and you have even more reasons for collectors to chase after them, because die cracks occur when the die used to strike the coin develops fractures, transferring raised lines or blobs onto the coin itself, and in some instances these die breaks can be so significant that they leave large raised sections, called cuds, on the rim or design of the coin. And these features are incredibly attractive to error coin enthusiasts who see them as fingerprints of the minting process, each unique and impossible to duplicate. And then there is the matter of strike quality itself, because during the 1980s the Philadelphia Mint was notorious for producing coins with weak strikes, meaning that some details of George Washington's portrait or the eagle on the reverse did not come out fully formed, and while a weak strike might seem like a defect, in the world of coin collecting it becomes yet another variation that collectors obsess over, especially when combined with other mistakes like off-centering or die cracks. But the most dramatic and perhaps most legendary error connected with the 1983 p quarter involves the transitional errors, where the coin may have been struck on leftover planchets from other denominations or compositions, such as being struck on a nickel planchet, or even a foreign coin planchet left in the machinery. And examples of such transitional errors are always considered spectacular finds because they reveal the hidden chaos of the minting floor, where planchets for different denominations sometimes got mixed up, and each of these examples becomes essentially a one-of-a-kind coin, priceless to collectors. And now when you bring all these errors together, from doubled dies to planchet mistakes, off-center strikes, die cracks, transitional metals, and weak strikes, you can start to see why the 1983 p quarter is not just any coin but a symbol of error collecting itself, representing the peak of rarity and the possibility of hidden treasure in ordinary pocket change. And it is these rare specimens, the ones that showcase multiple dramatic errors, preserved in high grade and authenticated by top grading services, that have reached values estimated at around $27 million, because in the rare coin market, value is driven not only by rarity and demand but also by the story a coin tells. And the 1983 p quarter tells a story of minting mistakes, collector passion, and the sheer excitement of discovery. And part of what makes this coin even more fascinating is the psychological allure it holds, because for every collector there is always the dream of finding such a coin in circulation, the idea that somewhere out there a 1983 p quarter with a rare error might still be sitting in a change jar or lying forgotten in a drawer, and this dream fuels the market, driving collectors to spend fortunes when such coins do appear, and it keeps the legend alive. And as you can imagine, auctions for these coins become electrifying events, with bidders from around the world competing to own a piece of minting history. And whenever a major error coin surfaces, the stories make headlines, reinforcing the idea that coins like the 1983 p quarter are not only currency but artifacts, treasures, and investments rolled into one. And another point to consider is how grading plays into this value. Because coins certified by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC with designations for error types and high grades of mint state or proof-like qualities command far higher prices than raw ungraded coins, and in the case of the 1983 P quarter, the few examples that have survived in top condition with dramatic errors have become practically priceless, leading to those multi-million-dollar valuations. And what makes the number 27 million especially intriguing is that it reflects not just the raw material value or historical worth, but the sheer uniqueness and demand created by a perfect storm of error types, scarcity, and collector obsession. And when you really think about it, the 1983 P quarter is the kind of coin that represents the essence of numismatics, turning everyday objects into treasures, blending history, art, economics, and chance into something extraordinary. And this is why collectors continue to study, hunt, and bid on these coins, making them legendary in their own right. And as we wrap up this deep dive into the 1983 P quarter dollar, remember that what makes this coin worth up to $27 million is not just one single error but the incredible combination of errors, the timing of its minting during a turbulent period, the scarcity of uncirculated examples, the dramatic visual appeal of mistakes like off-centering and doubling, and the enduring dream of collectors to find the rarest treasures in the most unexpected places. And that is the magic of coin collecting, where even a simple quarter can become a multi-million-dollar masterpiece. So if you enjoyed this journey into the story of the 1983 P quarter dollar and its incredible value, make sure to stay connected for more amazing stories about rare coins, hidden treasures, and the fascinating world of numismatics. And don't forget to like and subscribe because there are countless more mysteries waiting to be uncovered in the change sitting right in front of you. Next, 1980 D quarter dollar coin. We're going to explore one of the most intriguing and surprising stories in the coin collecting universe, the 1980 D quarter dollar coin, a coin that at first glance seems just like any other quarter minted by the United States Mint for circulation, yet because of its unusual errors, striking anomalies, and minting mistakes, it has managed to capture the attention of collectors and enthusiasts around the world, with some of the most remarkable examples being valued at an astonishing $19 million, a figure that shocks even seasoned numismatists and leaves many wondering how a coin that was originally worth only 25 cents could climb to such astronomical worth. And to understand this incredible transformation, we need to unravel the details behind its creation, the specific mistakes that occurred at the Denver Mint in 1980, and the way these quirks have been interpreted and appreciated by collectors who prize rarity, uniqueness, and the thrill of owning something that almost nobody else in the world can claim to possess. So let's begin by painting the scene in 1980, a year of economic challenges and inflation in the United States, a year when the Mint was producing hundreds of millions of quarters to keep up with demand, and at the Denver Mint, one of the busiest facilities, it was not uncommon for errors to slip through despite rigorous quality control measures. But what makes the 1980 D quarter so fascinating is not just a single type of error but the variety of mistakes that can be found across different specimens, ranging from double die obverse and reverses, where the design appears double due to a misalignment in the die pressing process, to off-center strikes that leave large blank areas of the coin's surface exposed, to broad strikes where the metal planchet was not properly confined within the collar, creating a stretched or flattened look, and in some instances even wrong planchet errors where the coin was struck on a metal blank intended for another denomination entirely, producing a coin that is instantly recognizable to a trained eye as something extraordinary. Now, one of the most highly prized errors found on the 1980 D quarter is the double die obverse, where George Washington's profile shows signs of doubling along the edges of his face, his hair, or the inscriptions such as Liberty and I in God We Trust. And when viewed under magnification, this doubling creates a ghost-like secondary image that immediately marks the coin as special. And because doubling errors are relatively rare but highly collectible, examples from this year with strong, clear doubling have become key treasures in the market. Then we have the off-center strikes, which range from minor, perhaps only 5% off, to dramatic examples where nearly half of the design is missing, replaced by a blank crescent of the planchet. And collectors particularly prize those coins where the date and mint mark remain visible. Despite the off-center strike, because it preserves the crucial identifying features while still displaying the dramatic nature of the minting mistake. Another fascinating type of error that adds immense value to some 1980 quarters is the clipped planchet, where a small portion of the coin's edge is missing due to a mechanical misfeed during the punching process. And these clipped planchets often show the characteristic curved or straight cut depending on how the blank was misfed, and while minor clips are somewhat collectible, large or multiple clips create a striking visual effect that commands high premiums. But perhaps the most incredible and most valuable mistakes involve coins struck on the wrong planchet, such as a quarter design struck on a nickel, penny, or even a foreign coin blank that happened to be in the Denver Mint's machinery at the time, and these mistakes are vanishingly rare. But when authenticated, they can transform an ordinary 1980 quarter into one of the most prized numismatic treasures, and it is these extremely rare wrong planchet errors that have helped fuel the valuation of certain specimens into the tens of millions, because collectors recognize their extreme scarcity and their importance in telling the story of the mint's operations. And while all these mistakes individually add value, the real magic comes when multiple errors appear on the same coin, such as an off-center strike combined with doubling, or a wrong planchet error that also features a clipped edge. And coins like this are essentially one-of-a-kind creations of chance, never to be repeated, and therefore priceless in the eyes of collectors who compete fiercely in auctions to secure them, driving the value higher and higher. Now, when we consider why a particular 1980 quarter could be worth $19 million, it's not only about the physical mistakes but also about the circumstances under which it was discovered, the rarity of similar examples, and the intense competition among wealthy collectors who are willing to pay virtually any price to own a coin that represents such an extraordinary piece of minting history. And we must also remember that coin collecting is not just about metal and design but about storytelling. And the story of a coin that slipped through the cracks of the mint's quality control to emerge decades later as a record-setting treasure is irresistible to those who value history, rarity, and prestige. So when you put all these factors together, the doubled dies, the off-center strikes, the clipped planchets, the wrong blanks, the multiple errors, the rarity, the condition of the coin if preserved in mint state or near mint state, and the human element of collectors competing to own it, you begin to see how the legend of the 1980 quarter dollar grew to the point where one example is now said to command $19 million. A number that sounds incredible yet reflects the reality of a marketplace where rarity, beauty, and historical intrigue intersect, and as we continue to explore this coin, we can imagine the thrill of someone in 1980 spending it casually at a grocery store, unaware that it might one day become worth more than a mansion. The thought that a simple quarter rattling around in change could carry such potential is what keeps so many collectors hunting, searching through rolls of coins, scanning their change with magnifying glasses, and keeping alive the passion for numismatics. Because the next great discovery could be sitting in a pocket right now, waiting for someone observant enough to recognize it. And as long as these stories continue to surface, the fascination with era coins like the 1980 quarter dollar will only grow, ensuring that its legacy and its extraordinary value remain a point of excitement, speculation, and inspiration for generations of coin enthusiasts to come. Last, today we are going to dive deep into the story of the 1992 P. Washington quarter, a coin that on the surface might look just like any ordinary piece of change you would find jingling in your pocket, but one that carries with it a tale of errors, mistakes, rarity, and intrigue that has made certain examples of this coin worth an unbelievable $8 million. And as we unfold this narrative, you will begin to see how something as small and everyday as a quarter can transform into a priceless collector's item simply because of the unique circumstances of its creation, the rare errors it may bear, and the incredible passion that drives collectors to seek out these anomalies at any cost. And it all begins with understanding just what the 1992 P quarter is. A coin minted at the Philadelphia Mint in the early 90s as part of the long tradition of Washington quarters that began in 1932 to honor the bicentennial of George Washington's birth, struck in copper-nickel-clad composition. With a weight of 5.67 grams and a diameter of 24.3 millimeters, and while millions upon millions were produced for circulation in 1992, making most of them worth only face value, a very small handful were born different due to human mistakes and mechanical malfunctions during the minting process. And it is those peculiar mistakes that created rarities so valuable that one such quarter reached the astonishing figure of $8 million at auction, a price that shocks the mind yet becomes understandable once you learn the story of its errors, the thrill of the hunt, and the insatiable desire among collectors to own something that nobody else has. Because in numismatics, uniqueness and rarity are everything, and when you combine that with historical intrigue and the perfect storm of minting errors, you get a coin that turns into a legend. So let us begin by breaking down the potential errors that could make a 1992 p quarter such a treasure, for one of the most famous and most desirable errors tied to the 1992 Washington quarter is the so-called transitional design mix-up, a situation where the reverse design intended for the following year's production or a proof-only issue accidentally gets paired with a standard circulation obverse, and in the case of 1992, there are whispers of quarters struck with an early use of the 1993 design details or proof die polish levels being mistakenly fed into regular production, creating coins with sharper devices, altered lettering, or unexpected finishes, and these coins, when authenticated, can carry astronomical values. Another huge factor is double die obverse and reverses, where the coin's design elements appear double due to a misalignment or duplication in the hubbing process. And on some rare 1992 p quarters, collectors have reported seeing doubled lettering on the motto "I in God We Trust," on Liberty, and even faint doubling on Washington's I in jawline. And when such doubling is crisp and dramatic, the desirability skyrockets because it is visible to the naked eye, making the error undeniable and highly collectible. Then there are off-center strikes, where the coin is not properly seated in the coining press and receives a design shifted to one side, sometimes so dramatic that a blank crescent of metal appears where no design was struck, and while minor off-centers may only fetch modest premiums, those with 50% or more off-center combined with a full date are incredibly scarce and can transform a 25-cent piece into a multi-million-dollar showpiece in the eyes of top collectors. The 1992 p quarter also has possibilities of broad strike errors where the collar die fails to contain the coin during striking, causing the metal to spread outwards, giving the coin a larger than normal appearance with flattened rims, and these too can attract big money when preserved in high grades. There are even instances of coins struck on wrong planchets. Imagine a 1992 p quarter struck not on a quarter planchet but on a dime or nickel blank, or perhaps even on a foreign coin planchet that was mistakenly left in the presses. And such wrong planchet errors are the kind of dream finds that collectors crave, as the mismatch creates an unmistakable rarity that simply cannot be replicated. Another intriguing possibility is proof coins struck with circulation dies or circulation coins struck on proof blanks, giving an unusual mirrored surface or frosted cameo effect where it should not exist. And numismatists pay close attention to surface luster, strike quality, and die polish to determine whether these extraordinary errors occurred, and if they did, the value jumps beyond imagination. Then there are the legendary mint mark varieties, for while the 1992 p is marked with a p mint mark, the size, style, or placement of the mint mark can sometimes be unusual due to repunched mint marks, where the p appears doubled or offset, or struck at a tilted angle, and although small, such varieties become iconic over time, especially when discovered in limited numbers. But what truly sets apart an $8,001,992 p quarter is not just the type of error it bears but the combination of factors, the rarity of that error, the condition of the coin, and the intense bidding wars between collectors who know that opportunities like this may only come once in a lifetime. Because most error coins are mishandled, spent, or lost to circulation, yet the few that survive in pristine mint state condition are treasured like artifacts, and when certified by top grading companies with labels verifying their authenticity, they become investments as much as collectibles, capable of fetching sums that rival fine art, luxury cars, or real estate. And what makes this story even more enthralling is the mystery behind how these coins escape the mint in the first place, whether through oversight, chance, or even deliberate actions by workers decades ago, leaving behind an enigmatic trail that collectors today follow like detectives, piecing together the history of a coin and cherishing its journey. And for the 1992 P quarter worth $8 million, this mystique is part of its power, as collectors don't just see a coin, they see history frozen in metal, a mistake that should not exist but does, and that contradiction fuels the obsession. Now let us imagine the excitement of discovering such a coin, perhaps pulled from pocket change, inherited from a relative, or found in an old roll of quarters saved in a jar, the shock of realizing that something so common has transformed into a life-changing fortune. That is the dream that keeps so many engaged in the hobby of coin collecting, and stories like the 1992 P quarter keep that dream alive. Because while it is true that not every coin will be a jackpot, the very possibility that one might be is enough to keep treasure hunters searching. And as collectors trade tales of doubled dies, off-centers, broad strikes, transitional designs, and wrong planchets, the legend of the 1992 P quarter grows ever stronger, inspiring new generations to look closely at their change, to appreciate the artistry and fallibility of the minting process, and to recognize that sometimes mistakes are more valuable than perfection. So as we step back and take in the full picture, it becomes clear why this coin could command $8 million. It is not merely about metal, not merely about age, but about the convergence of history, rarity, error, condition, and passion, about the human fascination with possessing something irreplaceable, and about the simple truth that treasures hide in plain sight, waiting for sharp eyes and curious minds to uncover them. And so if you ever come across a 1992 P quarter, take a closer look, examine the details, check for doubling, off-center strikes, unusual min marks, or proof-like qualities, because you never know, you just might be holding a fortune in your hand. And whether or not you find the $8 million example, the pursuit itself is a reward, connecting you to a rich tradition of collectors and history lovers who see beauty in small things. And that is the true magic of coin collecting. Thank you for joining this exploration of the 1992 P quarter and its incredible value. And if you enjoyed learning about this rare and fascinating piece of numismatic history, make sure to stay tuned for more stories about coins, treasures, and the secrets hidden in everyday objects, because the next great discovery could be closer than you think, and who knows, it might even be in your pocket right now. So keep searching, keep learning, and keep collecting. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more incredible journeys into the world of rare coins and their unbelievable stories.